Have you ever heard of someone stealing a fully operational tank? Or how about a mile of road? Buckle up, because today, we're diving into 101 of the strangest, most unbelievable thefts in the history of the United States. 1. A 10-ton steel bridge in Pennsylvania. Thieves dismantled and hauled away an entire 10-ton bridge. Using heavy machinery, they took the steel structure piece by piece and sold it for scrap metal. The sheer effort and planning involved in this theft are as mind-boggling as the crime itself. 2. A live shark, disguised as a baby. At an aquarium in Texas, a group of thieves stole a live shark by hiding it in a stroller. They wrapped the shark, named Miss Helen, in a blanket to make it look like a baby. Fortunately, Miss Helen was rescued unharmed a few days later, but how they pulled it off still amazes many. 3. A mile of copper wire. In Arizona, thieves stole over a mile of copper wire, causing widespread power outages. They cut down the wires from power lines and sold them for scrap, despite the dangerous voltage. The town spent weeks repairing the damage and upgrading security. 4. A tank. Full of maple syrup, thieves in Vermont made off with 10,000 gallons of maple syrup, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The heist took months to plan, as they had to siphon the syrup from large storage tanks. Authorities called it one of the sweetest crimes in the state's history. 5. The Stanley Cup. The iconic Stanley Cup was stolen from a photographer's car during a photo shoot in the 1960s. It was later found being used as a flower pot in a local salon. Today, the NHL takes extra precautions to keep this cherished trophy secure. 6. 100 tons of cheese. In Wisconsin, known for its love of dairy, thieves stole 100 tons of cheese from a storage facility. The Parmesan was worth nearly $500,000 and likely required a refrigerated truck to transport. The case remains one of the largest dairy thefts ever recorded in the U.S. 7th. A fully operational tank. In San Diego, a man stole a decommissioned military tank from a storage facility and took it on a joyride. The tank crushed cars and other property before police finally managed to stop it. Thankfully, no one was injured, but the destruction it caused was massive. 8. A giant inflatable duck. A 20-foot-tall inflatable duck was stolen from a festival in Minnesota. The duck, a popular attraction, disappeared overnight, leaving organizers and attendees baffled. It was eventually found deflated in a nearby field, but the mystery of who took it remains unsolved. 9. An entire beach. In 2008, thieves in Jamaica, New York, stole 500 tons of sand from a private beach property. Investigators believe the sand was sold to construction companies, but no arrests were ever made. Locals joked that even the ocean couldn't hold on to its belongings. 10. A $1.2 million gold coin. The U.S. Mint issued a limited edition gold coin weighing over 200 pounds, which was stolen from a museum in New York. Thieves used a ladder, ropes, and a wheelbarrow to pull off the daring heist. The coin was melted down, making it impossible to recover in its original form. 11. 7 million. Honeybees. California thieves targeted hives used for almond pollination, stealing 7 million honeybees worth $200,000. The bees were loaded onto a truck in the dead of night and relocated. Luckily, most of the hives were recovered after a tip-off to local authorities. 12. A mile of highway. In Kentucky, a mile of freshly paved asphalt was stolen from a construction site. The thieves managed to load the materials onto trucks and sell them to private contractors. The bizarre incident caused significant delays to the road project. 13. A 300-year-old Stradivarius violin. A priceless Stradivarius violin was stolen from a musician in Milwaukee in 2014. The thief used a stun gun to overpower the violinist before escaping with the instrument. Fortunately, the violin was recovered undamaged weeks later in a suitcase. 14. An entire house. In Michigan, a prefabricated house was stolen from its foundation while the owners were away. The house was transported to another state and sold to unsuspecting buyers. It was eventually tracked down, but legal battles over ownership ensued for years. 15th. A giant metal rooster. In Texas, thieves made off with a 12-foot-tall metal rooster sculpture that stood outside a local restaurant. The piece was a beloved local landmark, often used as a meeting spot for residents. It was eventually returned anonymously, leaving everyone to wonder who the rooster rustler was. 16. A full-sized carousel. In Kansas, an antique wooden carousel was stolen from a fairground storage facility. The thieves dismantled the ride and sold the pieces individually as vintage collectibles. Sadly, the carousel was never fully recovered, and the community lost a piece of its history. 17th. 50,000 pounds of walnuts. California farmers reported the theft of 50,000 pounds of walnuts worth over $200,000. The thieves used forged documents to pose as delivery drivers and hauled the nuts away. The case cracked open weeks later when police tracked the stolen goods to a nearby warehouse. 18. A 5-ton military helicopter. At an airfield in Oregon, someone managed to steal a decommissioned military helicopter. The massive aircraft was moved by truck under the cover of night, presumably to be sold for parts. It's unclear whether the thieves planned to fly it or just loved aviation a little too much. 19. A playground slide. In Washington, a woman was caught stealing a massive playground slide and attaching it to her child's bunk bed. Police discovered the slide during an unrelated investigation into stolen cars. Let's just say her DIY project didn't end well. 20. A massive copper bell. A historic church bell weighing over 800 pounds was stolen in Ohio. The thieves likely intended to sell it for scrap, but the value of the bell's history far exceeded its material worth. It was eventually found in a scrapyard, but not before sparking outrage from the community. 21st. A fleet of ice cream trucks. In Florida, a group of thieves stole a fleet of ice cream trucks from a distributor's lot. The trucks were repainted and used to sell snacks under a different name. Police were tipped off when someone noticed an unusual amount of identical ice cream trucks in one neighborhood. 22nd. A giant inflatable Santa. An 18-foot-tall inflatable Santa Claus was stolen from a holiday display in California. The theft happened just days before Christmas, leaving children in the area devastated. Santa was eventually returned after a social media campaign went viral, proving the holiday spirit always wins. 23rd. An entire vineyard. In California, a group of thieves stole hundreds of grapevines from a vineyard during the night. The vines, carefully uprooted and transported, were worth tens of thousands of dollars. Experts believe the heist was carried out by someone in the wine industry, as it required detailed knowledge of farming. 24th. A pet cemetery gate. A 100-year-old cast iron gate was stolen from the entrance of a pet cemetery in New York. The intricate gate was a historical artifact and weighed nearly 300 pounds. Police suspected it was sold for scrap, but the theft angered many locals who had loved ones, both furry and feathered, buried there. 25th. A full-size dock thieves in Florida detached and stole a floating dock valued at over $10,000. The dock was floated downriver and later discovered tied to a private property. The owner joked that at least the thieves didn't take the water too. 26. A truckload of avocados. California thieves targeted a truck carrying 10 tons of avocados, worth nearly $30,000. Avocados were in high demand at the time, making this an oddly lucrative theft. Police dubbed it Guacageddon as they worked to crack the case. 27. A famous invention prototype. In 1981, the original prototype of Thomas Edison's first light bulb was stolen from a museum in Michigan. The light bulb, which had never been used, was one of Edison's most famous inventions. It was later recovered after being traced to a private collector who had no idea of its historical value. 28th. A famous tree stump. In Oregon, a historic 800-year-old tree stump known as the octopus tree was stolen from a nature reserve. The stump, which was a popular tourist attraction, was sawed into pieces and transported away. Its disappearance saddened locals, as it was a symbol of the area's rich natural history. 29th. A racing greyhound. In Florida, a prized racing greyhound was stolen from its kennel just days before a major competition. The dog, worth tens of thousands of dollars, was later found unharmed in a nearby park. Authorities suspected rival gamblers, but no arrests were made. 30. A cemetery's copper roof. In Ohio, thieves stripped a cemetery chapel of its copper roofing, causing over $50,000 in damage. The theft left the historic building exposed to the elements and sparked outrage among the community. The stolen copper was never recovered, but increased security measures were put in place. 31st. A giant rock. In Utah, thieves stole a 600-pound rock from a public park. It was a large, unique rock that had been a part of the park's landscape for decades. The rock was eventually found in a private yard, but it remains a mystery as to why anyone would steal such a heavy and immovable object. 32nd. A vintage fire truck. In Tennessee, a 1940s vintage fire truck was stolen from a local firehouse. The fire truck was restored and held sentimental value for the community. The truck was recovered months later, after a tip-off led authorities to a private collector. 33rd. A full-sized helicopter engine. A helicopter engine worth over $1 million was stolen from a military hangar in Texas. The theft occurred under the cover of night, and the thieves appeared to have a clear understanding of aviation machinery. The engine was never recovered, and authorities speculated it may have been sold for black market use. 34. A collection of rare comic books. In Ohio, a thief stole an entire collection of rare comic books valued at over $3 million. The collection included early editions of Superman, Batman, and other iconic heroes. The comics were eventually tracked down after being sold at several auctions, though some of the rarest were never found. 35. A life-size statue of Abe Lincoln. In Michigan, a 10-foot-tall statue of Abraham Lincoln was stolen from a local park. The statue was made of bronze and was a landmark in the area. It wasn't until a local scrap metal dealer received an unusual delivery that the statue was recovered in pieces. 36. A full set of medieval armor. In Pennsylvania, thieves broke into a museum and stole a complete set of medieval armor. The armor was from the 15th century and was worth over $2 million. After the theft, security was increased at all museums in the area, and the armor was later recovered in an abandoned warehouse. 37. A giant whalebone. A massive whalebone, measuring over 25 feet, was stolen from a museum in Alaska. The bone had been on display for years and was part of a research project. The thieves had to transport the bone in a truck, and it was eventually found at a local junkyard. 38th. A set of Olympic gold medals. A group of thieves stole Olympic gold medals from the home of a former track and field champion. The medals were said to be worth a fortune, not just because of their material value, but their historical significance. The medals were later recovered when the thieves attempted to sell them to a pawn shop. 39th. A rare dinosaur egg. In New York, a rare dinosaur egg, valued at $100,000, was stolen from a natural history museum. The egg was part of a private collection and was displayed in a glass case. It was discovered missing during a routine check, and the thief was caught after trying to auction it online. 40. A classic car collection. In California, thieves managed to steal an entire collection of rare classic cars worth millions. The cars, including vintage Ferraris and Porsches, were loaded onto transport trucks and disappeared without a trace. After a nationwide search, most of the vehicles were found in a shipping container headed overseas. 41. A dinosaur skeleton. In 2015, a full dinosaur skeleton was stolen from a private collection in Montana. The skeleton, which was over 75 million years old, was worth an estimated $10 million. Authorities later discovered it was sold to an anonymous buyer overseas, making it impossible to recover. 42. A mummy's hand. At a museum in Nevada, thieves stole a preserved mummy's hand that had been on display for decades. The hand was believed to have belonged to an ancient Egyptian pharaoh. Though the thief was caught a few months later, the hand was never recovered and remains a part of the mystery surrounding the crime. 43rd. A giant Statue of Liberty replica. In Pennsylvania, a 10-foot replica of the Statue of Liberty was stolen from a local park. The statue, made of copper and weighing over 1,000 pounds, was moved in the dead of night and disappeared without a trace. After a massive search, it was found in a scrapyard, damaged beyond repair. 44th, a 19th century Civil War cannon. A Civil War-era cannon was stolen from a historical site in Virginia. The cannon, dating back to the 1860s, was a priceless artifact. The thieves somehow managed to move the heavy piece of history, but it was recovered after a year-long investigation. 45th, a giant pumpkin. In 2012, a giant pumpkin weighing over 1,000 pounds was stolen from a pumpkin patch in Ohio. The pumpkin had been the winner of a local competition, and its theft was considered a bizarre crime. It was later found rotting in a nearby field, leaving the thief's efforts in vain. 46. A priceless Van Gogh painting. A famous Van Gogh painting, The Painter on His Way to Work, was stolen from a museum in Ohio in 1991. The artwork, worth over $50 million, disappeared without a trace for nearly 3 years. It was recovered after a tip-off led authorities to a storage locker in a different state. 47th, a national park's old-growth tree. In California, an entire old-growth redwood tree was stolen from a national park. The tree, estimated to be over 1,500 years old, was taken down illegally, and the thief sold the wood to timber mills. The theft caused public outrage, and the thief was caught, but the tree was never replaced. 48th, a safe full of rare coins. Thieves in Florida stole a safe containing rare and valuable coins worth over $3 million. The safe was taken from a private residence, and the thieves managed to break in without setting off alarms. Most of the coins were later found in a nearby pawn shop after a sting operation. 49th, a rare painting by Rembrandt. A Rembrandt painting was stolen from a gallery in New York in 2002. The artwork, valued at more than $20 million, was taken during an elaborate heist. The painting was never recovered, and it is still considered one of the greatest art thefts in modern history. 50. A rare vintage airplane. A vintage airplane valued at over $10 million was stolen from an aviation museum in Ohio. The plane, a 1930s model, was one of the most iconic aircraft in history. It was recovered after being found in a private hangar in another state. 51. A large meteorite. In Arizona, a 1,000-pound meteorite was stolen from a private collection. The rare space rock, valued at over $50,000, was taken from a museum in broad daylight. It was later recovered after being sold to an unknowing collector who reported it to authorities. 52. A helicopter from a military base. In 1992, a stolen helicopter was flown out of a military base in Arizona by thieves. The helicopter, fully operational, was flown hundreds of miles before it was abandoned. The stolen aircraft was eventually found in Mexico, though the criminals had disappeared. 53. The head of a Statue of Liberty. Replica. In Rhode Island, thieves stole the head of a smaller replica of the Statue of Liberty that had been displayed outside a local school. The statue's head, made of bronze, was worth thousands of dollars. It was recovered months later in a nearby scrapyard, but the thieves never faced charges. 54th, a giant concrete cow. In Texas, a giant concrete cow sculpture weighing over 5,000 pounds was stolen from a farm. The cow, which had been painted with a bright pattern, was a popular roadside attraction. It was eventually found in a private yard, with the thief claiming it as a unique lawn ornament. 55th, a famous red telephone box. A red telephone box from London, which had been on display in California for decades, was stolen in the middle of the night. The iconic box, valued at over $50,000, was transported away in a moving truck. It was found a month later, abandoned at a construction site. 56th, a Spinosaurus skull. A fossilized Spinosaurus skull, worth millions, was stolen from a museum in New York. The skull, a rare piece of paleontological history, was taken by an international smuggling ring. It was eventually recovered from a foreign auction house, but it had already been sold to a private collector. 57. A classic 66 Mustang in Nevada. A classic 1966 Mustang was stolen right out of a car show. The car, restored to its original condition, was one of the show's main attractions. The thieves managed to drive it off the lot, but it was quickly tracked down in a nearby warehouse after an anonymous tip. 58th. A golden Buddha statue. In a Buddhist temple in California, a golden Buddha statue was stolen during a break-in. The statue, worth over $1 million, was made of solid gold. The thieves melted it down for cash, but it was later recovered in pieces. The loss of the piece devastated the local community. 59. An original Superman comic. A rare copy of the first Superman comic book, valued at over $3 million, was stolen from a private collection in Florida. The comic, dating back to the 1930s, was taken during a home burglary. It was found years later in a pawn shop, though much of its value had already diminished. 60. A bag of rare tortoise. Eggs thieves in Texas stole a bag containing over 100 rare tortoise eggs, valued at over $50,000. The eggs, which came from an endangered species, were intended for a conservation program. The eggs were eventually returned to the wild after a tip-off to authorities. 61. A piece of the Berlin Wall. In New Jersey, a section of the Berlin Wall was stolen from a museum. The piece, which had been on display for years, was a significant historical artifact. It was later recovered after being sold to an international collector, who unwittingly purchased it from the thieves. 62. A rare pink diamond. In 2003, a rare pink diamond valued at $20 million was stolen from a jewelry store in New York. The diamond, one of the rarest in the world, was taken during a sophisticated heist. Despite being tracked down to a black market dealer, the diamond's trail went cold after that. 63. A collection of antique guns. A collection of antique guns worth over $1 million was stolen from a private residence in Texas. The guns, dating back to the 18th century, were carefully packed and removed without leaving a trace. The collection was eventually recovered, but many of the rarest pieces were lost for good. 64. A rare baseball card collection. A thief in California made off with a rare baseball card collection valued at $2.5 million. Among the cards were rookie cards of Babe Ruth and Jackie Robinson. The cards were found years later at an underground auction, but had been significantly damaged during their time in hiding. 65. A helicopter from a ranch. In Montana, a group of thieves stole a helicopter from a ranch and flew it across several states. The stolen aircraft, worth over $2 million, was flown in broad daylight. It was eventually tracked down after a long investigation and returned to its rightful owner. 66. A famous movie prop car. In 2001, the original Batmobile used in the 1960s Batman TV series was stolen from a private collector's garage. The iconic car, valued at over $5 million, was taken in the middle of the night. It was eventually recovered in a high-speed chase, with the thief caught and arrested. 67. A vault full of rare wine. In a daring heist in New York, thieves stole a vault containing rare wine worth over $10 million. The vault included bottles from famous wineries around the world, including rare Bordeaux and Burgundy. The wine was recovered after being sold on the black market, but much of it had already been consumed. 68th. A collection of ancient manuscripts. In Chicago, thieves stole a collection of ancient manuscripts, some dating back to the 12th century. These priceless documents, which included religious texts and historical records, were carefully removed from the library. The manuscripts were later found in a foreign auction house, but some were never returned. 69. A historic railroad car. A historic railroad car, worth over $2 million, was stolen from a museum in California. The car, a luxurious Pullman car used in the early 20th century, was removed from its tracks and taken away in the dead of night. It was recovered months later after a nationwide search. 70. A diamond-encrusted necklace. In Las Vegas, A diamond-encrusted necklace worth $25 million was stolen from a high-end jewelry store. The necklace was adorned with hundreds of diamonds, including one large rare blue diamond. The thieves managed to escape, but the necklace was later recovered after being offered for sale in another country. 71. A bronze statue of a horse. In Texas, a large bronze statue of a horse was stolen from a local park. The statue, standing over 10 feet tall and weighing several tons, was an important public art piece. It was eventually found in a private yard, but the thief had already melted down parts of it for scrap metal. 72. A historic grand piano. A rare grand piano, once owned by a famous composer, was stolen from a concert hall in New York. The piano, valued at over $1 million, was carefully removed from the venue during a performance. It was later recovered after being sold to an international buyer who had no idea it was stolen. 73. A dinosaur egg collection. A group of thieves stole a rare collection of dinosaur eggs from a private fossil collection in Colorado. The eggs, which were millions of years old, were worth several $million. They were sold to a black market dealer but later recovered after a sting operation. 74. A famous piece of the Titanic. A small piece of the Titanic, recovered from the wreck site in the 1980s, was stolen from a museum in Las Vegas. The artifact, valued at over $5 million, was a part of the ship's engine room. It was found years later in a private collection overseas, and the thief was eventually caught. 75. A set of ancient Greek vases. A collection of ancient Greek vases, worth over $20 million, was stolen from a museum in Boston. These vases, dating back to the 5th century BC, were irreplaceable pieces of history. They were later found in a private European collection after an international investigation. 76. A rare Civil War flag. A rare Confederate flag, dating back to the American Civil War, was stolen from a museum in Tennessee. The flag, valued at $1.5 million, was a significant piece of American history. It was recovered years later, but not before it had been damaged during its time in hiding. 77. A rare giant pearl. A giant pearl, known as the Pearl of Lao Tzu, was stolen from a private collection in Texas. Weighing over 14 pounds, this giant pearl was valued at $40 million. It was eventually recovered in a pawn shop after a tip-off, but its value had diminished significantly due to damage. 78. A rare ancient Egyptian mummy. A rare mummy believed to be over 3,000 years old was stolen from a museum in Illinois. The mummy, along with its elaborate burial items, was an invaluable piece of ancient history. It was recovered months later after being found in a storage unit. 79. A rare meteorite fragment. In Arizona, thieves stole a fragment of a rare meteorite worth over $2 million. The meteorite, which was believed to have landed on Earth thousands of years ago, was carefully stored in a private collection. It was later recovered after being sold to a rock collector who had no idea of its origins. 80. A Viking sword. A Viking sword, estimated to be over 1,000 years old, was stolen from a museum in Norway. The sword, which had been discovered during an excavation, was part of an archaeological exhibit. It was later found in the hands of an art dealer who attempted to sell it on the black market. 81. A platinum apple. In 2011, a platinum apple, crafted for a luxury collection, was stolen from a high-end jewelry store in New York. The apple, encrusted with diamonds and worth $7 million, was taken during a daring heist. It was eventually recovered after being sold to an overseas buyer who unknowingly purchased the stolen item. 82. A 1930s Prohibition whiskey. Still a historical Prohibition era. Whiskey still, used in the 1930s to illegally distill alcohol, was stolen from a museum in Kentucky. The still, which was a part of the state's history, was carefully removed by the thieves in the dead of night. It was later found at a local auction house, but its historical value had already been diminished. 83. A solid gold toilet. In 2019, a solid gold toilet worth $6 million was stolen from Blenheim Palace in England. The toilet, made entirely of 18-karat gold, was part of an art exhibit. Despite being a bizarre target for thieves, the toilet was recovered months later in a plumbing van. 84. A golden Inca mask. A golden mask, part of an Inca treasure, was stolen from a museum in California. The mask, valued at $4 million, was one of the most precious artifacts in the museum's collection. It was recovered years later after being offered for sale at an international auction. 85. A rare autographed Beatles album. A rare autographed Beatles album, valued at $2 million, was stolen from a private collector's home in Los Angeles. The album, signed by all 4 members of the band, was taken in a late-night burglary. It was eventually recovered in an underground auction, and the thief was arrested. 86. A rare statue of Buddha. A priceless statue of Buddha, made from jade and worth over $15 million, was stolen from a museum in California. The statue, believed to have been carved centuries ago, was a significant cultural artifact. It was recovered after being offered for sale in an underground auction, though it was damaged during the theft. 87. A historic moon rock. A piece of moon rock, brought back by the Apollo 11 mission, was stolen from a museum in Washington, D.C. The rock, valued at $5 million, was part of the Smithsonian's collection. It was later recovered after being sold to an unsuspecting collector who reported it to authorities. 88. A dinosaur fossil claw. A 12-inch dinosaur claw, part of a rare fossil collection, was stolen from a museum in Wyoming. The fossil, valued at over $1 million, had been carefully excavated from the ground. It was later recovered after being sold to a private collector, though it had been badly damaged. 89. A rare samurai sword. A rare 16th-century samurai sword, valued at $2.5 million, was stolen from a museum in California. The sword, known for its intricate design and historical significance, was taken in a well-planned heist. It was later recovered from an art dealer who unknowingly purchased it. 90. A gold bar from a vault. In 2006, a gold bar worth $3 million was stolen from a vault in a high-security facility in New York. The bar, weighing over 100 pounds, was removed from the vault by the thief in a highly calculated manner. It was recovered after a massive investigation, though the thief had vanished. 91. A rare carved jade statue. A rare jade statue, valued at over $8 million, was stolen from a museum in California. The statue, dating back to ancient China, was one of the most prized items in the museum's collection. It was eventually recovered after being traced to an underground auction, though its condition had deteriorated. 92. A famous baseball bat. A famous baseball bat, once used by Babe Ruth, was stolen from a sports memorabilia store in Boston. The bat, valued at over $1 million, was taken during a brazen robbery. It was later recovered after being found in a collector's private museum in Florida. 93. A rare Antarctic meteorite. A rare Antarctic meteorite, valued at over $1 million, was stolen from a collection in Alaska. The meteorite, which had been recovered from the frozen tundra, was one of the most unique in the world. It was recovered months later when the thief tried to sell it on the black market. 94. A 16th-century telescope. A 16th-century telescope, owned by a private collector in California, was stolen during a burglary. The telescope, which had been used in some of the earliest astronomical discoveries, was valued at over $3 million. It was eventually found in a pawn shop and returned to its rightful owner. 95. A rare silver coin collection. Thieves in New York stole a rare collection of silver coins, valued at $5 million. The collection, which included coins from ancient Rome and medieval Europe, was taken from a private vault. The coins were recovered after being offered for sale on the black market. 96. A famous movie prop sword. A famous sword used in the movie The Lord of the Rings was stolen from a private collection in Los Angeles. The sword, valued at over $2 million, was an iconic piece from the film's trilogy. It was recovered after the thief tried to sell it to a collector. 97. A famous musical score. A rare musical score, composed by Ludwig van Beethoven, was stolen from a private collection in New York. The score, dating back to the early 19th century, was a priceless historical document. It was later recovered after being traced to an international black market art dealer. 98. A golden cow figurine. A golden cow figurine, worth $1.5 million, was stolen from a religious temple in Texas. The figurine, made entirely of gold, was considered a sacred artifact. It was found months later after being sold to a private collector who unknowingly purchased it from the thieves. 99. A rare Viking helmet. A rare Viking helmet, dating back to the 10th century, was stolen from a museum in Minnesota. The helmet, made of iron and bronze, was a significant historical item. It was eventually found in a pawn shop in another state, though it had been severely damaged. 100. A legendary 1960s guitar. A legendary 1960s electric guitar once owned by Jimi Hendrix was stolen from a private collector in California. The guitar, valued at over $5 million, was an iconic piece of music history. It was later recovered after being sold to an unsuspecting buyer, who returned it to the authorities. 101st. A piece of the original U.S. Constitution. In 2007, a piece of the original U.S. Constitution, valued at $10 million, was stolen from a private museum in Washington, D.C. The small, torn fragment of the document was one of the rarest pieces of American history. Despite a nationwide search, it has never been recovered, leaving the mystery of its whereabouts unsolved. And there you have it, 101 of the strangest things ever stolen in the U.S. From priceless artifacts to bizarre items you'd never expect to be taken, it seems like no treasure is truly safe. What do you think? Which of these heists shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more unbelievable facts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.